Hello and welcome to Media 7. Small countries need big companies. Finland has Nokia, and since 2001, New Zealand has had Fonterra, one of the largest dairy companies in the world. On its own, it accounts for a quarter of New Zealand's export revenue. It pumps as much as $10 billion a year into our economy. But a long run of good press for Fonterra was halted this year by the Sanlu milk scandal in China. In this week's show, we look at problems closer to home, where it seems Fonterra is no longer the media's sacred cow. Simon Pound reports.
New Zealand likes to advertise itself as clean, green and pure. It is also home to mega dairy company Fonterra. We often see reports on Fonterra's balance sheets and business. But do we see enough reporting on the environmental costs of hosting 4 million cows? It's not that there aren't stories out there. For example, the Waikato Times and 2 Ngātia schoolgirls have reported on water pollution by the dairy industry. But why isn't the story we're about to tell you in the mainstream media? Meet Mike Holmes. He's been an eel fisherman on Waikato waterways for nearly 30 years. In that time, he has noticed a developing water crisis. This is Lake Arapuni, north of Taupo. It has been seeded with eels so it can be fished as other lakes become unusable. And while, for now, it appears pristine, it too is in danger from dairy farming.
Dairy farming is so intense, they use so much fertiliser and they have so much effluent runoff. There's a lot of it.
Mike has seen fertiliser and animal effluent from farms kill off lowland Waikato lakes, like here at Lake Naroto.
They're a health issue in terms of recreation, so they're not much use for recreation, not much use commercially. So, we just turn them into septic tanks, really. Do we want to do that to all our lakes?
Over in Te Awamutu, you'll find this Fonterra plant. Fonterra is aware of some concerns and supports the Clean Stream Accord. It was signed in 2003 to combat these problems. But 2008 research suggests it leaves much to be desired. Environment Waikato recently released a report into water and soil quality in the region. The results were staggering. 75% of waterways may not be fit for stock to drink. 70% may be unsafe to swim in. The main causes? Leaching of fertilisers from farms, effluent runoff from dairy cattle. Author Dr. Peter Singleton.
The amount of waste from, for example, dairy cattle in the Waikato region is over 1 million dairy cattle in the Waikato region, and that creates a fecal load equivalent to 15 million people. That's 117 cities the size of Hamilton. 15
million people's worth of effluent. Maybe the perilous state of waterways and dairy's direct responsibility was hard for media to link. Well, it wasn't too hard for these enterprising schoolgirls. Kayla Leonard and Teresa Speedy from Ngātia Primary decided to look into why the Piako River was murky.
Why is the Piako River more polluted than any other river in the area?
It's because of farming. The Piako area is heavily farmed because it has such rich soil. That means there are a lot more cows that produce more effluent.
Polluted Piako ended up winning a worldwide film competition, Kid Witness News. And the dairy pollution link they found shocked the community.
Since we did the video, a lot of newspaper articles have been coming out about how the farmers should change how they work and stuff.
I reckon a lot of people should start to learn about it, because most of New Zealand was made up of dairy farms and just normal farms, and it affects a lot of people.
So there are affected people and science backing it up. This water crisis story even has some ready answers. Meet dairy farmer Andrew Hayes. 10 years ago his lakes were dying, so they built and fenced riparian buffers, areas with plants to soak up excess fertiliser, and they installed effluent management drains.
Now the whole bird life and the fish life has all come back again. It's a complete turnaround.
The Hayes also started to carefully control the amount of fertiliser they used. These may seem simple steps, but without publicity and awareness, other farmers continue the traditional harmful practices. The real questions, though, are, why was it up to schoolgirls to report this? Where is the story at a national level? Why aren't we seeing the problems and the answers? And when Fonterra profits are announced, where is the story asking, at what cost to the rest of us?
Simon Pound with that report, and you'll find a link to the award-winning polluted debacle on our blog at tvnz.co.nz/media7. If the environmental downside to the dairy boom has been off the media radar so far, that's not the case now, and we're joined by Bryce Johns, editor of the Waikato Times, which has recently run a series of news and feature stories on the costs of dairying. John Hutchings, the Fonterra executive overseeing the Clean Streams Accord, and Bryce Johnson of Fish and Game New Zealand, whose report on the realities of the Clean Streams Accord has stoked the news stories. Welcome to you all, gentlemen. Bryce Johns, if we could start with you. These stories in your paper have created a real stir. I guess the question has to be, why did it take so long for you to do them?
It hasn't taken long at all. We've been doing it for a number of years now. This is just the latest in the series, if you like. And the biggest one we've done would have been 2 years ago when the Lake Taupo problem became very apparent. And the government and EW and various organisations are pouring in tens of millions of dollars into that. And like we did with this one, we went down there, we talked to people living on the lake edge, we talked to farmers, we talked to a whole range of people. And I guess like anything in the media, you need something to spark off a news event. And the EW report out recently, which paints such a bleak picture, that was
it gave you some data.
Well, new impetus. And what you do is you start off by talking to essentially the talking heads, which is some leaders from Fonterra, perhaps, Federated Farmers leaders, the authors of the report, that sort of thing. And we weren't satisfied. After a week of getting around the tables, we thought, right, well, let's just get out there and talk to people who live off the water. And we sent a report from Fonterra.
A lot more people in your catchment live off farms, don't they?
Right.
There's something like, 53% of salaries are agriculture related? I mean, were there readers who thought you were killing the golden goose here?
Oh, absolutely. Every time you run a story on that, you get a range of feedback from the green side of things that say it's about time, and you get a load of negative feedback from, you've got to say, your core readers, which are the conservative older types who are probably on farms. And they send you a range of stuff. I got one letter from a guy who included a clipping from a local paper that said gorse was responsible for nitrogen runoff, and here was a new study that proved it, and we were literally killing the golden goose. So,
John Hutchings, these stories that Bryce's paper has run seem fairly damning. Were they fair, from your point of view?
Well, Waikato Times plays to its audience. 10,000 of Waikato folk, farming folk, who are part of your market. What we could hope for is that the facts be presented, all of them, and the stories I read.
What facts weren't presented?
The facts were there. The stories I read, I think you had a reasonably good coverage of the facts. Second, we could hope for balance. Balance, well, we could have expected and hoped for more of the other side. I mean, there's a minority of our dairy farmers who left the side down, and as those letters that Bryce referred to indicate, there's a majority who are absolutely committed to sustainable dairying.
It's something like, I mean, the figures you've given out are something like 95% of farmers are doing the right thing.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, 98% now have nutrient budgets, 97% have culverts and bridges, 87% have fenced streams to keep the cows out of the creek.
Bryce Johnson, I can see you
That's
shaking
progress.
your head there.
And we still have dirty water. So I mean, I think that really sums it up. We still have dirty water. You can claim the statistics in terms of what's going in, what counts as what's coming out. And we still have very dirty water. It's something New Zealand relies on. We're basically crapping in our own future. And that's why I think we've got to get tough with this.
It depends how you look at them, isn't it? And there's a really good one out of EW at the moment. They're putting a helicopter up in the air regularly. They're checking farms out, basically spy in the sky, if you like. And they're saying they're only getting 40% compliance from dairy farmers who are literally following all the effluent rules. That's a much different figure than John's, clearly.
Yeah, and we need to focus in on compliance. We know we've got a challenge here. We've got programs, Russell, rolling out all around the country to actually help farmer dairy suppliers understand what the rules are, understand what the effluent management systems are they might apply, and helping them have effluent management plans that make them compliant.
Because your company put out a fairly stern press release in response to Bryce's organisation. Surely the proof of the pudding is going down and looking at the Waikato River, and it does not look good.
The Waikato River quality is a consequence of 100 things in that catchment. Just take the city of Hamilton. You have a storm like you had today. It washes off the roads and motorways like you wouldn't believe. We're all in this together, the variety of contributors, Fonterra is certainly working with its suppliers to do everything it can to reduce loss from the farm.
Yeah, but let's be clear here. You can work with the suppliers. You've got to go a lot further than that. You've got to start making these suppliers compliant. And when you've got bad performers who aren't being challenged by the company and are getting away with it, well, then the company simply loses environmental integrity.
This is the story.
That's what's
this is the
here.
story. It's your job to tell,
Yes,
isn't it? To try and get placed in the media.
Well, it's not just us. I mean, Environment Waikato does it. The media are doing it better now. I think the media could certainly pursue the industry a lot harder than they are to get and to make these senior members of the industry more accountable, put them on the spot, and put them up there and ask them the hard questions.
I get the impression that you were the head of the organisation at the time as well. Maybe 4 or 5 years ago, when the Clean Streams Accord was brought in, right, you actually got a big media presence with that dirty dairying campaign. Right. Has it been harder to tell that story in the interim?
Well, we actually, at Fonterra's request, we actually backed off on the campaign after the first year so that they could have a go at trying to get their own people to perform better. And we met with Craig Norgate and senior members of the then board of Fonterra. But the fact is we're now 5 or 6 years on and we've still got dirty streams. So our view now is the industry's got to step back in, take a lot more control, require its poor performers to do better and have some very serious penalties if they don't. At the moment there are no serious penalties. They're getting away with it. I mean, we had a major dairy farmer just recently prosecuted for the 4th time. I mean, how long do you need to keep whacking this guy before he realises?
Are you and John in the media war over this? Because you both have quite different stories to tell.
When you say the media war, it's very hard to get Fonterra into the media on this sort of thing. They very much want to talk to us behind closed doors. We don't mind some of that, but at the end of the day, they've got to start telling the public what they're going to do, and they haven't really been doing that.
What's the message you have to go out with? I mean, I presume you got a communications briefing before you came here because you work for a big company.
Absolutely.
What's the message you have to go out with?
We are committed to sustainable dairying. We have to ensure that every step in our supply chain has integrity. And on farm, of course, we start by providing solutions. We do have an effluent indicator system, as we call it, that has the ultimate penalty of not picking up the milk and deductions short of that. But the starter point is to work with those suppliers who are significantly and persistently non-compliant and help them through their issues.
Boss Johns, I mean, you've got two people telling very, very different stories here. Your journalists presumably aren't scientists. How do you actually approach these stories? Because you've got some powerful communications going on here.
It's about providing the balance. You've got to talk to both distinct sides of an argument, which we do try and do. But you also need to get out there and actually look at what really is affected and what's affecting people's lives. And there's a couple of key points from the two gentlemen's discussions here that we really need to touch on. One, Bryce, you'd know this as well as anyone, you're not going to see clean water in 3 or 5 years. This is a 20, 50-year problem before nitrogen gets taken away. So to suggest that we can clean things up in that short time frame is just not realistic.
We're not saying clean up in a short time frame. We're saying commit to a program that has serious consequences for people that aren't committed to making that happen.
Yeah, and look, things are changing. Environment Waikato's prosecutions of dirty dairies have never been higher. They're taking a much firmer line. Intrigued, John, by, of course, we know that the ultimate penalty you can impose is to not take milk off someone. It stuffs their business. So how many times have you done that?
Yeah, we have several people within the system. I'm not willing to disclose their names. I'm pleased to say that in all but one case, working with those farmer suppliers has given rise to effluent improvement that's moved them way beyond their non-compliance into the right space.
And look, that's a good thing to hear, but it's a message that needs to get out there. It's like when we cover a court case and we can report on the penalty that someone gets, it's a huge deterrent. And we have certainly never had Fonterra saying, we are cramping down on guys. They're saying we've got the ability to do it, but the fact that you are and people are responding is a message you do need to get out.
We'll talk a bit more about messages after the break. And we will come back with a look at consumer campaigning and greenwashing in a very different industry to dairy.